The storm rolled heavy across the plains, dragging its dark belly over the horizon as though heaven itself was mourning. Clara tightened the thin shawl around her shoulders, shivering against the biting wind that cut through her like a knife. In her arms lay not one child, but three tiny, fragile bundles of life, each with its own weak cry. The triplets, her daughters, no more than a few days old, squirmed against her chest as she stumbled down the dirt road leading away from the town she had once called home. Behind her, the church bell tolled in the distance. It was not a call to worship, but a reminder, she was no longer welcome. Her in-laws had turned her out, branding her cursed for birthing 3 girls at once, calling it a punishment from God. Her husband, John, lay cold in the ground, felled by a fever that swept through last winter, leaving her a widow. She had no family, no money, and now, no home. Every step Clara took pressed her deeper into despair. Her body still ached from childbirth. She was weak, bleeding, and exhausted, but the cries of her babies kept her moving. She dared not stop. She dared not turn back. The memory of her mother-in-law's face still burned in her mind. The sharpness of her voice when she spat, 3 mouths we won't feed. You're a burden. Be gone before nightfall. Clara staggered into the open prairie, where only the whistling wind bore witness to her misery. She whispered to her daughters, "Don't you fret, my loves. Mama will find a way." But even as she spoke, tears rolled freely down her face. By sundown, she could walk no further. She collapsed beneath a lone cottonwood tree, clutching her babies close to her breast. The ground was cold, the air sharp. Clara closed her eyes, praying for a miracle. The miracle came, not in thunder, nor in angels' song, but in the steady creak of wagon wheels. Through half-lidded eyes, Clara saw the shadow of a man astride a wagon pulled by 2 dark horses. His figure was tall, broad-shouldered, and silent as stone. He stopped the wagon a few paces from where she lay. For a moment, Clara thought she was dreaming, a ghost of the plains come to carry her away. The man climbed down, boots crunching against dry earth. He wore a wide-brimmed hat, his face hidden in shadow, but his presence was not cruel. He knelt beside her and looked down at the sight of a woman clinging to 3 crying infants. Clara tried to speak but her throat was raw. Only a broken whisper escaped. "Please, don't leave us." The man said nothing. He simply extended his hand. Strong, calloused, steady. Clara hesitated, unsure if she should trust him, but something in his silence spoke louder than words. It was not pity in his eyes, nor judgment, but a quiet resolve. With trembling fingers, she placed her hand in his. He lifted her gently, as though she weighed no more than a feather. One by one, he lifted the babies too, tucking them carefully into his wagon as though they were treasures, not burdens. Clara sank into the worn seat beside him, still clutching one of the infants, as he took the reins and turned the wagon westward. The man's name, she would later learn, was Elias Carter, a rancher known by many, though few could claim to know him well. They called him the Silent Rancher, for Elias spoke little, preferring the company of his cattle and the wide, unbroken sky to the noise of town life. His homestead lay miles from anywhere, nestled in a valley where grass grew tall and water ran clear from the mountain stream. To Clara, it was paradise after the hell she had endured. When the wagon stopped in front of his cabin, Elias climbed down, then offered her his hand again to help her down. Clara's legs trembled, but his strength held her steady. Inside, the cabin smelled of wood smoke and leather. A fire already burned in the hearth, chasing away the chill. Elias brought blankets, fresh water, and even a jar of milk warmed on the stove. Still silent, he set to work building a small crib out of planks stacked in the corner, hammering the pieces together with careful precision. Clara sat watching, the babies wrapped in her arms, her heart aching at the unexpected kindness of a man who owed her nothing. Finally, when the babies were nestled in the makeshift crib, Clara looked up at him and whispered, why did you help me?" Elias paused, his eyes on the fire. When he finally spoke, his voice was low and rough, like gravel turned in the river. "Because no one else would." Clara's throat tightened. She turned her face away, but silent tears betrayed her. Days turned into weeks. Clara regained her strength under Elias's roof. She tended the fire, cooked meals, and mended clothes, while he worked the ranch, mending fences, driving cattle, hauling hay. He never asked for thanks. He never demanded anything of her. In the evenings, when the work was done, Elias would sit by the fire and carve wooden toys for the babies, tiny horses, little dolls, a cradle no bigger than his hand. Clara would watch him, her heart softening toward the man who said so little yet gave so much. The triplets thrived. Their cheeks grew round, their cries strong. Clara sang to them softly, her voice filling the cabin with lullabies she thought she had forgotten. And every time she looked up, she would find Elias watching, not with desire, but with something deeper. A longing he himself could not name. One night, as the wind howled against the shutters, Clara spoke the fear that had haunted her since she arrived. "They called my girls a curse," she whispered, her eyes on the fire. "Said no man would ever want a woman who bore 3 daughters at once. They said I'd bring nothing but ruin." Elias turned his gaze toward her, his jaw tight. Slowly, he set aside the piece of wood he had been carving. For a long moment, he said nothing, as though weighing every word. Then he rose, crossed the room, and stood before her. Clara looked up, her heart hammering in her chest. Elias bent, his shadow falling over her, and took her hand in his. His grip was warm, steady. He held it for a moment, then finally spoke. "They were wrong," he said, his voice like thunder breaking after a long drought. "Those girls ain't a curse. They're a blessing. And you're the strongest woman I've ever known." Clara's breath caught. Tears welled in her eyes. She searched his face, expecting to find pity or kindness, but what she found instead was something more, an unspoken promise. The silent rancher had spoken, and in his words, Clara found the hope she thought she had lost. Through the seasons that followed, Clara and Elias built a life together. It was not marked by grand gestures or lavish words, but by small, steady acts of love. He taught her to ride the land, to rope calves, to mend fences. She filled his home with warmth, laughter, and the sound of children. The town whispered when they saw them together, the woman once cast out, now standing proud beside the silent rancher. But Clara no longer cared. She had found a place where her daughters were cherished, not shunned. And every time the nights grew long and doubts crept into her heart, Elias would take her hand again, the same way he had on that cold night beneath the cottonwood tree, and remind her without many words that she was never alone. For sometimes, it did not take 1,000 words to change a life. Sometimes, all it took was the silence of a man who knew how to love, and the strength of a hand that would never let go.